My work has really always been about relationships. As I've gotten older, I've gone through different phases where I think it's about mortality, or it's about human suffering, or it's about the changes in one's body and one's psyche as you get older. But it's really, bottom line, it's always been about relationships. It's about relationships between people, or between objects, or from day to day. I've been fascinated with images like birds on a telephone wire. That just keeps coming back and haunting me, and showing up in my work everywhere. And I think that's really about the personal space of birds as they jostle with each other and find their place, and the fact that they are living their lives in a separate relationship, a relationship to each other, whereas humans are on the ground below them. You know, we could have fires or accidents or earthquakes or whatever, and birds don't care. So I find that relationship, or that lack of relationship between people and birds, to be of interest there. And then, of course, the relationship between the birds. So I think everything I do, whether it's working in grids or showing the differences from one thing to another, or the similarities from one thing to another, or the minor differences between things that otherwise look the same, it's always about relationships.
My work is about layering and about process a lot. I tend to work in lots of different colors, and find that I'm drawn to imagery that has another reflection or layer to it. I'm thinking mostly about the different things that I find in trees as far as the bark, and the different healing wounds that I find on tree bark, or whether it be in windows of a building and architecture, and have the nature reflected in those windows and the different abstractions that come from that. So I'm looking mainly about layering and seeing things that are on top of one another and under one another, and whether they're in the foreground and the background. So I'm constantly playing with that, and I find that my work takes twists and turns when I'm actually creating, because I do work more about process and whatever the painting's telling me to do at the time, even though I start out with themes. But generally my theme will come back around when it's time for that hard decision making at the end.
Robbin and I were students together at Mills College. We graduated in 2000, and we spent many a day and night in the painting studio working in separate areas on our separate projects. But I always admired Robbin's work and noticed how differently she worked than I did. She was very physical, and I'm sort of very cerebral when I approach work and do a lot of thinking before I, touch brush to canvas. So I was intrigued with Robbin's process, and first getting out of school, in terms of still looking for my own process to settle in and find the way of working that was best for me, I was very open to the idea of experimenting and trying out new ideas. And so the idea of collaborating with Robbin was really intriguing to me. We had a chance to begin this process. I think it was in the back of our minds individually, and then we had a chance to begin it when we decided not to be part of a group show. But in the aftermath of talking about why we didn't want to be part of that show, we realized that one of the things we would have wanted to do that didn't seem to be in the cards in that show was to collaborate and put together a piece. So we met over coffee and started talking about how would we do that, and why would we do that, and what were the parameters, and did we need rules, and that sort of thing. So that was the beginning of our collaboration together on this piece.
Well, part of our process was that we were going to have some parameters around theme. We wanted to look at community and things like that, but primarily it was just going to be an exchange of paintings, exchange of pieces we would build. We built 16 wooden pieces, 2 feet by 2 feet, 24 inches by 24 inches, and we each had 8 in our studios, our respective studios, at any given time. And every month we would meet and switch 4 pieces. And so what we did was we didn't talk about it. We just decided that some of the rules were that we were going to paint. We weren't going to discuss anything about the work. We would just journal. We have our journals that we kept throughout the 3-year period that we painted. And each time we would meet, we would just take 4 that we were ready to switch and swap them, and take the others back and work on whatever we were going to do for the rest of the 8. We would always have the 8 in the studio. And sometimes we would leave some for a very long period in each studio because we either weren't ready to paint anymore on them, or we thought they might be a little bit finished. And so part of the process was when we did switch, if something came back and forth without any changes for a period of time, then we would probably figure that that one was probably close to being finished.
When we began, we started in August of 2001, and we didn't really know how long the process would be. We suspected it would last for about a year. That seemed like a lifetime to us, and because we were going to be meeting to exchange these every 2 weeks or so. And as it worked out, the thing took 3 years, like Robbin had mentioned, and it had its own natural ending point, which was when the pieces no longer needed to have anything added to them or taken away, which was an evolving process. Initially, we were adding more and more paint to the pieces, and then eventually it seemed that we needed to edit and take away, and we refined them over probably the last third of the process. But the first thing that happened we thought was really kind of interesting, and again, we couldn't talk to each other, so we just sat there and looked at each other as we were, you know, in a parking lot at Mills exchanging these pieces. So Robbin showed up with 4 pieces to give to me, and I showed up with 4 pieces to give to her, sort of mid-August of 2001. And here they were, these wooden boards where you could still see the grain, and we had prepared them the same way. So they had polyurethane on the surface, but you had all the grain of the wood. And what each of us had done was so similar, it was just shocking. I mean, sort of mind-boggling to the 2 of us, and very exciting and sort of spine-tingling, you know, at the same time. She had written a letter to me in charcoal, I think it was, describing what this meant for her, what this journey was about. And it was sort of like a diary entry on these 4 pieces. And I had done something very similar. I had written words from the theme we were working with, words like community, communication, trust, cooperation, decision-making, risk-taking, covering and uncovering, layers, revealing, peeling away, visual intercourse and discourse. Words like that. I had written those words over and over and over again on the grain of the wood with a magic marker. And so we had written to each other, and that was our first beginning, our first tentative moves on these paintings. From then, they began to develop with color and shape. But that's how we started.